Carlos, did you see? Do you know who Giannis Antetokounmpo is? The
Yeah, the
amazing.
Bucks.
Yeah.
Antetokounmpo.
Did you see his interview about whether or not the season was a failure? I was watching it and I was like, Carlos would love this. It's the most dialectical sports interview I've ever seen.
I
Can
have
we
not.
can we
No,
watch it quick?
of course. You know what's fun? When the FIFA was going on, there was this like expert show that was going on, and I never watched soccer. I just watched the last few games to see Argentina win. But this one guy was talking about how important it is to have comprehensive training in sports that goes beyond just the training that's done in the field, that encapsulates stuff related to mental health. And he was talking about how in order to have this correct performance in the field, you need this whole backdrop. And he was talking about it in terms of development and the interconnection of everything, and having to look at it from the whole. And I'm like, well, there you go. Those are the scientists in soccer. Those are the soccer scientists. And as Engels used to say, the scientists have already unconsciously, they can't tell you where it comes from, but they're doing it. They're already thinking dialectically. And those people that are, the best trainers and the best analysts in soccer, they were able to provide a dialectical materialist analysis of what it takes to be a successful soccer player or a soccer team, right? It's not that hard. It's just think in terms of wholes, see things in their interconnection, and see everything in a process of development. That's it.
And it's changed how I think about wrestling, something that I've done my entire life. I've talked about wanting to write a book called Dialectics of Wrestling because what you realize is, like Carlos said, what the Russian system that they've devised for training up wrestlers is just a dialectical system. It's a dialectical way to look at it, and their athletes don't get super nervous, before matches because they have a materialist understanding of what it is. I just have to go compete. I have to focus and do my best, but that's all I can do. My skills are what they are, and I've developed them through practice, through material, concrete practice in the lead up to this. And, it's a lot different than the way a lot of Western coaches will tell you to think too. But yeah, when I saw Giannis saying this, it was the same thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's thinking dialectically. He doesn't realize it. And what's so funny is the media and the reporters so often don't. They so often have this just like, it's like a reality TV show for them,
Yeah.
right? They're just
Yeah.
trying to cook up drama. And that there's a good poem called "The Man in the Arena."
Mm.
That's about how like basically you can't understand what the athlete is going through as an outside reporter, and the reporters are just talking about the drama and whatever, and they're totally disconnected from the athletes who are actually there putting it on the line. So yeah, kind of what that reminds me of. But this is really interesting here.
I just asked Bud the exact same question, but
This guy's one of the best basketball players in the NBA, if not the best right now.
He's like 6'11" or 7'1" or something. He's fucking mass. He's a beast.
Yeah, he's from Greece, and NBA MVP a year or two ago.
this season is a failure.
The reporter asked him if he sees this season as a failure.
Oh my god.
He's like, you fucking idiot.
Okay, because I'm not that up. You asked me the same question last year, Eric. Okay. Do you get a promotion every year in your job? No, right? So every year you work is a failure. Yes or no? No. Every year you work towards something, towards a goal, right? Which is to get a promotion, to be able to take care of your family, to be able, I don't know, provide the house for them or take care of your parents. You work towards a goal. It's not a failure. It's steps to success. And if you've never, I don't want to make it personal. So there's always steps to it.
Moments in the process.
Michael Jordan played 15 years, won 6 championships. The other 9 years was a failure. That's what you're telling me. No, I'm asking you a question. Yes or no? Okay, exactly. So why you asking me that question? It's a wrong question. There's no failure in sports. There's good days, bad days. Some days you are able to be successful. Some days you're not. Some days it's your turn. Some days it's not your turn. And that's what sports is about. You don't always win. Some other people's gonna win. And this year somebody else is gonna win. Simple as that. We're gonna come back next year, try to be better, try to build good habits. try to play better, not have a 10-day stretch with playing bad basketball, and hopefully we can win a championship. So 50 years from 1971 to 2021 that we didn't win a championship, it was 50 years of failures. No, it was not. It was steps to it, and we were able to win one. Hopefully we can win another one.
And in my experience wrestling, like I used to get I'm so competitive, and I used to put so much on every match that I would lose and I would just go crazy, and I would think of it as the end of the world and I suck and I have to change something drastic. But I would miss learning. I wouldn't learn as much from it because I wouldn't look at it rationally, right? I wouldn't look at it as, okay, here's what my skill set is. Maybe in this match I didn't implement my skill set, or here's something that my opponent was doing, right? And then what can I do to improve my skill set? Well, I can only improve my skill set one day at a time through practicing, through reps, right? You oftentimes as an athlete, you lose and you're like, I have to change something drastic. I have to, completely change my diet. And, usually it's just small tweaks that you need to make. But if you see a failure as the end of the world, if you see, a loss in isolation, disconnected from the other factors that allow it to happen or that cause it to happen, you fail to learn from that loss, or it's harder to learn from that loss. But if you see, a common word that they tell you in sports, or a common phrase, is trust the process. If you see it as a process, and if you see failures as just moments in this, process that's constantly unfolding, you can learn from those failures and you can learn from your successes, and you never get too high from your successes. You never think I'm invincible, and you never get too low from your failures, because you realize it's all part of a process, and that you as an athlete are in a constant state of change based on these different moments that you're undergoing, or influenced by these different moments of practice or of competition or whatever. So yeah, I thought that was really, really cool there. Very dialectical.
He's on the money. I thought he was, when he put his hand in his head, I thought he was gonna say, "Have you not fucking read Hegel, bro?" He did.
Pulls up Phenomenology of Spirit.
He has like a pocket version. Yeah, but I'm trying to look for the quote. I can't find the quote, but yeah, these things that are looked at as mistakes, as failures, as errors, they're essential moments in the development of something else, right? When you see the development of a plant, and you see the bud that gives way to the flower, it's not the case that the flower is true and the bud is false, or the bud was a mistake, or the bud was an error. No, the bud is an essential moment in the development towards the flower. And that's the case with the MJ victories. The failures were essential moments for the success. And, that's what Antetokounmpo is getting in such a wonderful fashion. And really, this one of the things that the Western Marxist tradition does, besides just its political rejection of actual socialism, is a rejection of the Marxist worldview. They want to limit what Marxism is to areas that are more and more narrow, right? It ends up just being the science of society, but then it's not very good at that. So it's just a critique of capitalism. It's not this massive historical way of looking at. So they keep narrowing it, right? And that is, from the beginning of that narrowing, destroying Marxism, because Marxism is at its core a worldview, a way of approaching the world. And what the Chinese are doing is saying, how can we use this worldview in as many areas of life as possible? And you're seeing it in sports. You're already seeing it with bourgeois sports specialists, how it is that in order for them to be as successful as possible, they need to almost intuitively think through a dialectical materialist lens, right? You won't see anyone say, if you want to succeed in sport, just focus on this activity as opposed to the other ones. You won't see anyone say, hey, where you are in this moment, you'll always be here. You have to have almost a foresight of seeing things in process. You've done scouting, right? You have to see what potential is in your wrestlers. You have to see them in movement. You have to see how they're interconnected to other aspects of their life, their work ethic. You have to, if you read things statically, if you read things in a way that disconnects things from everything else, that alienates things from each other, if you read things from the perspective of something that's very refined and individual, not from the perspective of the whole, you're going to fail in your job as a scout, and you're going to fail in your job as a coach, or you're going to fail in your job as an athlete. So it just confirms what Engels has been saying, for what Engels was saying at his time towards the end of his life, as he was studying science as closely as anyone else. I mean, he read Darwin's The Origin of Species in the first week. A week after it comes out, he's sending this massive letter to Marx. And what's funny is that a week before that, he was predicting something that Darwin's text confirms. But he's been saying this. The scientists are already thinking dialectically in many areas. Some of the greatest discoveries in the sciences were discoveries that prove the dialectical materialist worldview. The problem is that they're not doing this. They can't trace back who it is that these ideas come from. They're not going to talk about Heraclitus and Hegel and Marx and Engels, but they're thinking in line with that worldview. And it's very easy to take them from, hey, we have systematized what it is that helps you succeed in your scientific studies. That's what happened. You had these great scientists that would go to the Soviet Union and they'd be like, holy shit, I've been a dialectical materialist my whole life. Right? So,
Right. Yeah, when you brought up the scouting thing, that's such a good point. I mean, my first thought it went to the youth wrestlers who I work with. Now that I've coached at every level, high school, college, and youth, you see the process of development. How, like, with my college guys, I often want to go back to like fourth grade and instill certain habits in them, because what you do, back then can even pay off later on. It's all a process. And the famous example that I thought of was Peyton Manning and Ryan Leaf. Not to get too deep into sports here down the rabbit hole, but it was one of the most famous draft debates. Who are we going to take first round? This young, cocky, partying quarterback, Ryan Leaf, who is the most talented quarterback maybe we've ever seen in college football, or Peyton Manning, who's a leader who has more potential but doesn't have the same physical intangibles. Manning ended up being drafted first round, even though they almost took Ryan Leaf first round, because a lot of the scouts couldn't see the potential of Peyton Manning was much, much higher than Ryan Leaf. And Ryan Leaf ended up burning out and drinking, or getting into drinking and partying. And now he's actually come back from that, and he's an advocate for sobriety. And he's actually a really good guy. So he even kind of sublated his situation too. But the potential there, the scouts who picked Manning could see the future, right? They could see it as a process of development, versus a lot of the other scouts were just caught up by the intangibles of Ryan Leaf in that moment, in that one static moment where he was only a 21-year-old kid.
Yeah, that's so interesting. The one sport that I haven't followed much out of the popular U.S. sports is